Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Erica Sharves, and I'm the University Relations Manager at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. When I joined Blue Cross 18 years ago, I was a student looking to develop and grow professionally. And the reason why I've stayed at Blue Cross for so long is because of the amazing culture and people. But enough about me, and we'll definitely learn more about Blue Cross later on in today's session. I'd like to jump right to today's agenda. Navigating the workplace has its challenges, and for a person of color, it can feel heavy. So today we're going to hear from my colleagues who are going to share their experiences and stories. What a wonderful way to learn from this virtual village. I'd like to take this time to introduce today's moderator, Nicholas Bates, and in advance, thank the BU team for their collaboration and partnership. Nicholas Bates is the Assistant Director for Thurman Center Networks and the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground at Boston University. In this role, Nick researches the life of Howard Thurman and oversees the HTC Student Ambassadors, a cohort-based program of students who read and discuss Dr. Thurman's work. Additionally, Nick works on strategic partnerships that support the mission of the HTC and conducts trainings on leadership, ethics, and values using the teachings of Dr. Thurman. So Nick, how are you?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm well, and thank you for the lovely introduction. You made me sound much better than I actually am.
Of course. I'm excited for today's dynamic panels.
Me too. So I have the pleasure of introducing two really important people at Blue Cross Blue Shield, Massachusetts. And one is actually an alum, but I'll start with our alum first. So Michelle Corton Brown has over 25 years of experience in leading, managing, and providing strategic direction to corporate, philanthropic, and nonprofit organizations. Before moving into her current role as Vice President of Business Development, she led strategic growth and development of quality interactions as its CEO and guided daily operations within the company. Michelle is also a graduate of Boston University as she holds a BA in economics. So welcome, Michelle. We're so happy to have you here, and thank you for agreeing to do this and impart your wisdom.
Thank you.
Next, I will introduce Eddie Walker, or Edward, as he may go by, is the Vice President of Medicare Product Portfolio at Blue Cross Blue Shield, Massachusetts. Eddie leads the individual and group portfolio market offerings and solutions, product management, and Medicare project portfolio strategy and management. Eddie rejoined the company after spending 3 years at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Rhode Island, where he was the managing director. He was responsible for product strategy and development, as well as sales and distribution, enrollment, and customer experience. Eddie holds a BS from Tufts University and an MBA from Cornell University. So it's still in Massachusetts. It's Tufts. It's not BU, but we'll take it. So welcome, Edward.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So one, I want to say thank you all for joining us. We're happy to have two panels with two different perspectives, but really excited for the perspective from you two as two people who have been executives at the company and have had quite a lifetime of work and experience. So you've seen some things and you've experienced some things. And so to get us a little bit started, I was wondering if both of you could tell us a little bit about your journey, sort of in the corporate world and the working world. Just tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Do you want to, Michelle?
Why you kick it off, Eddie?
Okay. So for me, my first job out of college was doing claims analytics and reporting for a large property and casualty insurer, actually here in Boston, which is where I grew up. I progressed within that organization to various roles, ultimately working as an internal consultant. One thing I noticed as I had moved up, I sort of hit this point where I noticed other folks around me were progressing at a slightly faster pace. And then I also noticed that those folks had one thing I didn't have, which was the MBA, and that prompted me to go full time to Cornell to go do that. While I was pursuing my MBA, I had this strange thought that maybe I wanted to try something I was more passionate about. And at that time, I thought it would be pretty cool and fun to work in sports. And to be honest, it was simply by dumb luck that I actually landed a job. If you would have asked me back then, I would have said it was my dream job, working with the New England Patriots, which for me, as someone who grew up in Boston, that was a big deal. When I got there, no fault of the Crafts, who are amazing people, and it's an amazing organization, but the truth is I was miserable. And so that prompted me to return back to the same property and casualty insurer as a director of competitive intelligence. I did that for about 10 months before I was promoted to a senior director to lead the product intelligence and analytics function. I got to a point in that role while I was progressing and really climbing the ladder. Frankly, I was working way too many hours and felt like it was starting to impact my health. I was managing a team on the East Coast as well as a team out in Seattle. And that time difference, while it's not major, makes a substantial impact on your life and lifestyle. And so it just became too much. This was all around the same time that things were happening with ACA, or people probably know it as Obamacare. And I was intrigued by what was happening in the healthcare space. That got me looking at Blue Cross. Everyone I had talked to that had worked for this organization had nothing but wonderful things to say. I joined the organization several years ago in our corporate leadership rotation program, which was a fantastic way to learn about healthcare as someone who hadn't had a ton of experience. And then was presented with an opportunity, as you mentioned, Nick, in Rhode Island to lead the Medicare segment. And to be honest with you, it was at the time too good an opportunity to pass up, and I jumped at it. And so I went and led their segment. I did that for about 3 years. And then my boss here at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts had an opportunity. And so I've rejoined in August as the Vice President of Medicare Product. And it feels like a homecoming of sorts. And so I'm happy to be back with the organization. That's my 30-second path.
So I'll jump in. After I graduated from BU, with a degree in economics, I joined a small regional bank in Connecticut, where I learned the business of business as a financial analyst. I learned a great deal. I was in a competitive management training program, one of those programs where you have to sort of hit certain milestones or you get kicked out of the program. And it was the first time I'd had that kind of experience in a professional environment. It was really rewarding work, but not necessarily something that spoke to my heart. And through some networking and relationships that I had built, I segued from that role to a role in private placements, which is sort of a precursor to venture. And I work with small businesses or growing businesses that were about to go public or had the potential to go public. And it was really rewarding work at the time. And then I had a crisis of consciousness. And I didn't even know that was going to sort of happen to me, but I was asked by one of the executives at the travelers insurance companies to take a sabbatical from work, a 4-month leave of absence to go work with United Way. And I thought to myself, okay, this is going to mess up my bonus. I'm not sure what's going to happen when I get back. I'm not sure how I feel about this, but I was told that I was a relationship person and they needed a relationship person in this role. And so I went to do that work for 4 months, and lo and behold, I discovered that there was a whole part of my persona that I had lost touch with. The community service work I did as a child with my family, the work I did in church, all that sort of came back to me as something that was really important. And I knew that I had to figure out a way to center that element of social justice and community service in my work. And so it became a catalytic event. I came back after that 4-month experience, told my boss, like, I love what I'm doing, but I really have to figure out my higher calling. And through, again, networking and relationships, I landed a role at Travelers, still at the same company, but as a manager of the corporate foundation. And over a 4-year period, I went from sort of administrative manager to executive director of that foundation, leading some really interesting work at the intersection of business and healthcare, really looking at ways in which we could solve for the very high cost of healthcare when people are born in the early years, and then what we do at the end of life. Really fascinating work. So I was set, figured I'd do that until the cows come home. Working in corporate philanthropy is one of those roles that people don't typically give up easily. But I fell in love, and my husband got a great job that he couldn't refuse in Boston. And so I became a kicking and screaming trailing spouse moving back to Boston. And again, through relationships, through my network, discovered there was an amazing role at what used to be the First National Bank of Boston, which takes some of us back a long time. And I met my then person became my boss, Ira Jackson. And for 10 years, I led the Bank of Boston Foundation, running a $5 million program that ultimately became a $100 million program that spanned from New England to South America, doing some really interesting work in Chile and Argentina and Uruguay and Brazil. Just an amazing exposure for me. And then the bank, there were many banks in New England at that time, but they started to merge. And Bank Boston merged with its competitor, Fleet Boston. And I became the first president of the Fleet Boston Foundation, which was really also an amazing opportunity to learn and grow and to architect a new social corporate responsibility platform for a new company. So I did that for a while, and then I got tired of being the money lady. I know it sounds really weird, but like my kids thought I was famous because we'd go to Stop and Shop and people would stop me. And my kids were like, how do people know you? And I said, I have a really, really big checkbook, right? And so after a while, I felt like I needed a new challenge. So I went to a P&L role and led investment management for endowments, think universities and hospitals that have large endowments. And then I segued from there, I'm just going to make this quick, into the nonprofit space, left there and became the CEO of a for-profit company called Quality Interactions that works on reducing health disparities by training frontline professionals on how to meet the evolving needs of diverse patient populations. I joined Blue Cross Blue Shield about 9 months ago. I am having the time of my life. It's an incredible company. And I hope as you get to learn more about them, you'll learn about those opportunities. I'll stop here.
One, thank you both for sharing so much. And there's an important piece that I want to tease out for our student audience. Even though I'm extremely inspired and motivated to do more than I'm already doing currently, our students often struggle with, hey, I'm trying to figure out my major, what I want to do career-wise, or they get to their senior year and they're trying to figure out what's my path and what's this path that I'm supposed to be on. And they think that by senior year, you should just have everything figured out. But both of you just articulated how you move through multiple companies and multiple career opportunities. And that is really how life really works in the working world. So thank you for sharing that perspective with our students. And I'll get into our next question. When we joined on earlier, Edward and I were talking. He said, I'm a little bit early. And I said, well, the way we all were raised that early is what you're supposed to be. That's on time for us. And so that was always the lessons that my mother gave me as a single mother, is that, to be early is to be on time. And so the question that I really want to ask you all is, and this is something that you alluded to, Michelle, when thinking of your own journey, are there any key moments or stories that you would like to share about a time when you may not have been able to be authentic, right? To be your true self?
So I think that my experience in my first job, right? My mother moved me to Hartford, Connecticut. She had the wherewithal to invest in my first apartment, took me to Brooks Brothers and bought my first suits. And I was ready, as my grandmother would say, ready for Freddie, right? I show up, at the job. And about a month in, I thought, wow, this totally isn't my jam. Like, there are things that I can learn here and I really want to be present, but this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I think that the first thing I would say to soon to be graduate students is that you shouldn't worry about the longevity of your first job. You're there to learn and to grow and to figure out, just as you've been doing in college, like who you are and where you fit and what works for you. So try hard, work hard, but recognize that your first job is probably not going to be your last job. So think about what you can put in your virtual toolkit from that experience. Like even today, I still use the financial analysis background I gained in that first job in this job, but I don't want to do that old job ever again.
That's awesome. I think I would, so a caveat here, I would probably need to know more about what we mean when we say authentic. But that said, I would say there's a way you'll need to show up professionally that's probably a little different from who you are at home completely. And by the way, that I say that, but that doesn't mean that you're not being authentic. I think at the same time, you don't have to sacrifice your values and other qualities that make you who you are. I think ultimately it's a personal decision. And I think it's helpful to understand how you'd like to show up each and every day. And given that, how does that fit with the organization you're looking to be a part of? For me, I decided a long time ago, there are some things I'm not willing to do or sacrifice. And I've had instances, where sometimes that's come into question, but I have a firm line on certain things and where I'm not willing to budge. And so I think, as folks are looking at opportunities, just being mindful of, how you want to show up each day and how that fits within the organizations you're looking to be a part of.
That's a great response, and I love what you both shared, and you're absolutely right. You don't have to compromise who you are, but you do have to adjust to different environments with different expectations, right? We don't talk to our parents the same way that we talk to our friends. It's a different level of respect, and it's a different way of communicating. So moving to our next question, I think something that we all face as professionals at in any given moment, but earlier on too in our careers as well, is this idea of an imposter syndrome, right? This feeling that we don't belong in a space, or a space isn't meant for people that look like us. Can you all talk to us a little bit about how you dealt with those feelings in the workplace of feeling inadequate, or maybe feeling like that this space isn't for you or you don't belong?
Do you want me to? I can take that first, Michelle. I may have experienced a little bit of that, but I think ultimately I just had to get over myself and realize that I do belong here. And not only that, but I've got a track record in education, et cetera, to prove that I deserve a seat at the table. And so it's been, I think, I'm probably early on, it was something that I spent a lot of time thinking about, but the sooner you can get over that and focus your efforts and energies elsewhere and towards where you're trying to go, I think the better off you are.
Yeah, there's not much more I would add, except I would say that I think it's about mindset. When you start a new role, you're learning. And I think staying in an orientation that says, I am learning, and therefore I may make a mistake or two, but I'm earnestly endeavoring to master, as opposed to trying to show up, what I would describe as a performance orientation, which is I've got this, and being unwilling to get feedback, to use mentors, to use the resources available. I think that's like the trick bag that some people fall into. When you're getting hired into entry-level roles, people know you don't know. You're growing and learning. And the way in which you prove your value is by your intellectual curiosity, your tenacity, your willingness to stick with it and learn how to master the work. And if you keep yourself in that mindset, then you're not really worried about how you're showing up, because you're showing genuine enthusiasm around mastering skills.
This is amazing advice for two people that have probably mentored countless of professionals as well. And so that's actually directly related to my next question, your ideas on mentorship. When I was in college, I had a wonderful woman by the name of Teresa Walsh who told me that I needed to find mentors, both mentors that look like me, but mentors that don't. But for you all, in your careers, when you're looking for a mentor over the time in your careers, do you look for someone who specifically has similar or the same lived experience, and has your stance on that changed as you progress in your career?
That is such a great question. And I think it has changed over time. When I was early in my career, I was looking for people who were one or two steps ahead of me career-wise or level-wise to provide guidance. I thought they were sage, and they were, and they'd been around and they could provide me advice. As I've matured, note I didn't say getting older, I said mature. Um, as I mature, I realized that my network of friends and colleagues is pretty rich. And so I deputize myself as sort of the CEO of my life, and I've created a personal board of directors. And I've curated a group, I don't call them together in a formal way, but I've curated a group of 9 to 12 people who, when I have an opportunity or a challenge, I reach out to them. And they're diverse. Some are in my industry, some aren't. Some are older, some are younger. So I think that that's something that we can all do, because sometimes mentorship is hard to find that magic with those people. But in the meantime, you can control who's in your ecosystem and how you leverage those relationships.
I would agree with all of what Michelle mentioned. It's interesting. I typically refer to this handful of folks that I keep very closely to me as my go-tos. And then I also look for opportunities where I can be helpful to them as well. So it's this really nice exchange. And then to address one of the comments you made, Nick, I don't necessarily, I think early on in my career, I probably did look for folks who had similar background, had an experience that was more akin to what I knew growing up. But I think you learn that diversity of thought in this way is very helpful as you progress. The only other thing I would add is I tend to look for, this concept of mentors versus sponsors, right? And I tend to think of mentors as these folks I can go to whenever I have a challenge and can pick their brain. Sponsor to me is a little bit different in that this is someone who can advocate for you when you're not in the room, right? So someone usually at a senior level who can speak to what they know about Eddie when I'm not in those, a part of those conversations, and ultimately maybe even give you a job. So I keep a network of folks in that way as well.
Those are great points. I echo those same sentiments. My mother always used to tell me that when you start working, you need to become the CEO of Me Inc. Is how she used to describe it. Just say you get your board of directors and you take care of the CEO of Me Inc. And so I love that phrasing, and also that comment about sponsors, right? Folks who have positions who could open some doors for you that you may not be able to open for yourself, but you have to be prepared to walk through those doors though as well. That's that one thing I'll add to what you said. To get into our next question, and this is really quite simple and straightforward. How have you all navigated, I'm going to say racism. I don't like the word microaggression. I think that's just diet way of saying racism. So how have you all navigated sort of encountering racism in the workplace?
I think for myself, I would say I've had instances where, if we use the term microaggressions, I hate that word too, by the way. But I've had instances where I've addressed certain things directly, but always in a very professional and polite way, not at all confrontational. And then I've had other situations where I simply let something go, either because it was the best thing to do in that moment, or to be honest with you, I simply didn't have the energy. And look, if I went my entire career trying to address every instance of something I encountered, I'd have no career because I'd be too exhausted, frankly. And so I think you have to pick your spots wisely. A good analogy is probably akin to a boxer, right? So don't be a brawler simply throwing punches hoping that something will land, but be a boxer in that you're taking your shots strategically and using your energy efficiently, because you'll be fighting battles all day if you try to address every single thing that you encountered. And so be smart about that.
And know when it's time, when the toxicity level is so high that you can't flourish. It's okay to walk away. I had an experience that was a racist experience that was actually the most benevolent racist experience I could imagine. I had been working at this regional bank, and after the training program, you needed to go out and find a job elsewhere. And I was interviewing, but not getting a job. And finally, one of the hiring people said, you know, you're amazing. You've got good analytical skills, good people skills. I just know if my customers are ready for a Black woman account officer. And it wasn't said in a way that was meant to hurt me, but I understood in that moment that my ability to be successful in that environment was limited. So I needed to make different decisions.
Wow, you know, your comment, Michelle, reminds me of an experience I had actually where, you know, I had someone who was working for someone who worked for me. And unfortunately, this gentleman he'd been doing some things that were not completely compliant with some of the regulations we have to adhere to. And his boss made me aware of it. I went to my boss and said, hey, just to let you know, this is something we have to address. My boss's question for me was, what do you think we should do about it? And so the gentleman in question here, he was a younger African-American guy, really good. I thought brought a lot of value to the organization. And the one thing with him is, given his role, he wasn't the best performer. He wasn't the worst. He was in the middle somewhere. But there were lots of things he did for the organization outside of that specific role where he added value. And so I knew, just given how my boss was, that, you know, despite whatever I recommended was the appropriate response here, he would suggest firing this person. So I went back, had a conversation, circled back with my boss and said, I think we should move him to a different area because I think he has a ton of value, et cetera. And my boss said, let me go away. I'll talk to my boss and see what she thinks. And so it came back that, yeah, you have to let him go. So I had been coaching the woman who reported to me, who was this gentleman's boss. She had never let someone go. I was coaching her through this process, and here's how it typically goes and what you should expect. And she was so worked up about it. On the day of when this conversation was supposed to happen, I got a phone call from HR saying, hey, change of plans. You're going to do the firing. And then his boss, she's going to pull the team together while you're having the conversation with this gentleman. And, you know, in the heat of the moment, I didn't think twice about it. I simply thought, oh, you know, she's been worked up about it. She's losing sleep. So sure, I'll take care of it. I get down to where this conversation is going to take place. And I'm the first one there, again, Nick, because I'm early for everything, like ridiculously early. And I'm sitting there in this area, and I'm just, you know, buying some time reading some of the postings on the wall related to fair employment, equal opportunity, all these things. And in that moment, it hit me why I was there. And as I had this split second thought of, oh, wait a minute, I understand why I'm here. This gentleman comes walking around the corner, and he and I are the first two there. We make eye contact, and we both, without saying a word, understood why he was there and why I was there. And, you know, look, so I had that conversation with this gentleman. Unfortunately, we had to let him go. Months later, when I was sitting with HR and the lawyer talking about the situation, whatever, and the head of HR at this organization said to me, well, what do you think the chances are that he'll sue us? And I said, well, you know, he did make some comments that led me to believe he's had some experience where we may be concerned about that. And then the lawyer of all people, Michelle, you know, you can't even make this stuff up. The lawyer of all people turns and says, yeah, but how can he sue us if the person who fired him is Black too? Yes, the lawyer. And needless to say, you know, that was the point, Michelle, you talked about getting to a place where, you know, where you realize, yeah, this isn't for me. That was my moment. And the interesting thing about the story with this young man is I actually had a personal relationship with him outside of work. Very good guy, sharp. He and I are friends till this day. And in fact, exchanged messages yesterday. But we both knew what was happening. And the unfortunate thing is I've had a lot of mentors and folks who have gone before me who warned me about these types of things. And somehow I had it in my mind that I would have a different experience. But yeah, you will see some things that are pretty nasty. And, I think it puts you in a position at times where you've got to question, is this really the place for me?
I'm happy you both bring up this point about knowing when it's your time to leave, picking and choosing when you engage these things. Certainly we all would have the urge to respond to any and everything in ways that we want to. Sometimes I always say that I have those moments where feel like I have to remind people that I'm from Chicago. And when I have those moments, that means I need to, take a walk or excuse myself. And so I love this idea of picking and choosing those moments. And thank you all for sharing such wonderful stories. My next question, and both of you all are sharp, or what my grandmother would say, casket sharp today, is this idea about the politics of professional dress, right? The ways that we have to wear our hair, the ways that we may cut our beards and all of these different things. Personally, myself, I made a decision in 2017 that I'm a great professional. I know that I dress really well, but I got tired of getting haircuts and I decided that I wanted to grow my hair. And that was a decision that I made, and I knew that I could deal with the expectations and also the results of what happened. So for you all, how have you navigated those ideologies of professional dress throughout your career?
So I think that every organization has a set of written rules and then a set of unwritten rules. And I think that it's important as we think about our careers that we understand what's going to be required for us to suit up effectively to have a successful career. So if you're on Wall Street, you have to do what the people on Wall Street do. If you're in sports, there might be more flexibility. I will say, though, that there is a great deal more latitude than there's ever been before. I have a 23-year-old son who recently landed a great new job, and he interviewed, and we're in the pandemic, right? Not everybody's feeling comfortable about going to the barber shop. And he wasn't that sort of Wall Street, shaved look that I'm accustomed to when you go for an interview. And he was like, I'm good. And he got the job. And I think there's a lot more appreciation for value alignment in how we represent ourselves. I think there's a lot more flexibility around, braids or hair color, whatever that is, than there's ever been before. But I do think that that notion of understanding the rules, written and unwritten, in whatever environment you want to be in, you have to understand that trade-off, Nick, as you're entering your career.
100% agree. For me, it's always been, I looked at the folks who were in the positions that I sort of aspired to, and I watch how they carry themselves, I watch how they dress, et cetera. And so I think, look, it's the old cliche, to be the part, you have to look the part so that people can make a connection and see you in that role. So look, I've had, people will make jokes about this with me from time to time, that I'm always fully suited up, et cetera. But that's just trying to run a business. That was my ultimate goal someday. And so I need to look the part. I think it's a personal choice too. To Michelle's point about finding the right balance and understanding the risks associated with the trade-offs you want to make. Ultimately, it's a personal choice, and whatever you are comfortable with, just know, depending on where you land on that, folks may or may not judge you. And if you're okay with that, then more power to you.
That's a great point. And that's why I wanted to echo my sentiment. For me, I made a choice, but I understood the risk and expectations with my decision and with my choice. And so I think that's important that you both sort of echoed that sentiment, is make sure you're prepared for what comes with this. Whether it's right or wrong, we all know that, right? Right or wrong. And we know that things are coded and little under the table type of comments. We know what that looks like, but that's going to be a part of your experience anyway, regardless of what you're doing. So it's important. My next question for you all is, This sort of start, I wanted to say this year because it does feel like it's still 2020, but about 2020, how did some of the events of 2020, the racial unrest, the global pandemic, the major faults that we see in our healthcare system that are leading to other conditions that have always existed, but some have expanded. How did, seeing all of these different things that began in 2020 and continue today change the way that you show up at work?
I think for me, so I noticed a couple of things from many of my colleagues is more of a willingness, I think sort of this open-mindedness or willingness to listen more than I've ever experienced. I know as things were sort of happening, I was getting text messages from people I'd worked with 10, 15 years ago, and people just sort of this awakening of, I didn't realize. And I'm like, look, please. But I think I would say two things. One is I've noticed folks, an increased willingness to listen to different points of view. And then the second thing is, and I think we're fortunate to be with an organization like Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, because our CEO from the executive team all the way down, this is hugely important, and they are forcing us to have what might be for some uncomfortable conversations. And so I would say those two things. One is folks are willing to listen, and two, organizations are increasingly pushing themselves to have the type of conversations that just 5 years ago we may not have been comfortable having.
Yeah, I think there's been a great deal of focus in companies generally, but definitely feel it at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I joined the week after George Floyd died or was murdered. And our CEO had a conversation, a CEO Connect, where he talked about how we were all feeling about that, right? So that was a really powerful thing for me. What I would say for me personally is I've never been a shrinking violet on issues of this magnitude, but I have like zero tolerance for frackle knackle, like zero tolerance. And so wherever I am, and I sit on a number of boards throughout the city, I'm involved in a number of other civic activities. If I see it, I name it. That can make some people slightly uncomfortable. I'm never in your face about it, but did you meet, can we just for a moment go back and can we unpack that a little bit? I will take the conversation there. Because I realize I now sit and have sat for a while in a seat of power. And if I don't use that seat appropriately, like shame on me, right? Why am I there?
Yep.
And I can give agency and voice to others. I can speak truth to power in ways that perhaps other people may feel less comfortable doing so. And I really see it as my obligation to do so.
Mm. Yes, that's yes. Yes. That's such an amazing point, and thank you for being that person. Especially when you have power, there are those who abuse power, and there are those who use power to uplift others. But this is actually a direct point related to that. This idea of tone, right? How we as Black and or brown professionals are often policed in our tone, right? And so even in your examples of saying that when I see it, I name it, folks can try to twist and or misinterpret your tone as if you are trying to do certain things with your tone. And so how do you navigate sort of that knowledge of that expectation that you should probably turn down your tone or say things a little bit nicer than someone else may be expected to?
I'm thinking about that for a minute, Eddie. I don't know if you want to take that because I'm thinking.
I would say much like you described in some of your situations, Michelle, I've had those instances as well. And I do feel a heightened sense or obligation to address things. I'm not shy about that. I am very nuanced. I would say, very careful about my word choice, etc. But I think you can do it in a way always that gets your point across without putting yourself in harm. There's a skill to it, and I think it only comes with experience. For me, it has come with time. And then the only other piece I would add is that the unfortunate reality is as Black and brown folks, you are going to be held to a different standard. And that is just a sad, sad reality of corporate life at times. But I think there are ways to address things where you don't put yourself in harm's way.
Yeah, that was well said, Eddie. I believe that when you're the only person in the room of color, there's a heightened focus on everything you say and do. And I used to call it the E.F. Hutton effect. Like you guys might be too young, but there used to be a commercial that E.F. Hutton had. It was like, when they spoke, everyone listened, right? And I'm conscious of that. And that is a enabler. That's a tool that can be appropriately used. So I don't necessarily feel like I have to take a certain tone, but that I can say what needs to be said conversationally and calmly. Because I think that the other part of communication is you have to keep people with you long enough to hear what you're saying. And if I go to a highly emotional state, I've lost. But if I can stay rational and calm, people can hear it. They may not like it. That's a whole nother thing, but they can hear it. And I'm only going after, did you hear where we are?
No, that's a really great point. I've always thought about, what is the context of the situation, when we are addressing things that we see, whether they're injustices in the workplace or addressing a performance related issue. So for me, this idea of tone has always been about, do I need to say it, right? Does it need to come from me? Am I the best person to deliver this information to said person who has an issue or an infraction? And so that's one of the ways I've also navigated, and along with some of the other advices that you all have mentioned, where you said, knowing the expectations in that space. And so I think you can do a good job once you know the expectations of that space and the expectations of you in that space. So thank you all for sharing. I have two more questions for you all, and then I'm gonna let you go because I know you all are busy folks. My question for you all is around this idea of allyship. What advice would you impart on allies looking for guidance on ways to support your journeys?
So I'm sure that Eddie, actually, I'm sure that we've all had this experience. I used to call them Zulu moments. I was in a meeting. I'd make a statement that had a level of insight. It went unnoticed. 2 minutes later, someone who didn't look like me would make the same statement. Eureka, they've said something amazing, right? And an ally can see that situation and without, back to tone and messaging, say, that was really awesome when Michelle said that. And Ben, I'm glad you came back to that point. I've had allies do that for me. I also think that it's been helpful. I remember the first time I presented at the board of directors meeting at First National Bank of Boston. I was nervous. I knew what I needed to say, but I was still nervous. And I will never forget a board member by the name of Wayne Budd was on the board. And I'd been at the company for, maybe 6 months, and I interacted with him in civic events or whatever. And he said, before I could speak, I just need to let you know, Michelle is making an incredible presence for this company out in the community. I've seen her do this, I've seen her do that, I've seen her do this. I credit her for this and that. I just thought you should know. And then I spoke. And it gave me both the confidence and it built my creds among people who didn't know me. And folks do that informally all the time, but an ally, recognizing that maybe you don't have others that might do that for you, takes that on.
I don't have anything to add to that.
Absolutely. So my last question for y'all, thank you for sharing that. That was beautifully said, Michelle. So just follow along with me. Here at Boston University, we also have this wonderful place called the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground, founded in 1986 by Dean George McKechnie, to continue on the legacy and work of Dr. Thurman, who was a mentor to many in the civil rights movement, a spiritual mentor, and many folks like Jesse Jackson and Dr. King actually carried his book, Jesus and the Disinherited, with them as they were along on their journeys. So I want to read this piece of a meditation from one of Dr. Thurman's books called Meditations of the Heart. It's about this idea of centering down, and then I'm going to ask you all a question. So he has a meditation called How Good to Center Down, and a few lines he says in the meditation is how good it is to center down, to sit quietly and see oneself pass by. The streets of our minds seethe with endless traffic. So during all of the things that you all have encountered throughout your career, mental health is a really important conversation that we're consistently having today. How do you all take moments to center down in your professional career?
So I'm an avid reader, and that takes me to lots of spaces and places, and I make time for reading. COVID has created a certain challenge of personal interaction. And as much as it gets exhausting to be on Zoom, I also make time for my friends. I need to see people. And so that has also sort of centered me. And I love long walks.
Yeah, I would say for me, earlier in my career, I was so focused on climbing this ladder. I mean, I literally could have killed myself as much as I could tell you stories about work until 3 a.m., 4 a.m., being in the office so late that I have to go in next door and get a dress shirt, et cetera, to go right back to work. It was crazy, but I got to a point where I realized I was sort of stuck in this race and I've been very deliberate about carving out time to do just what you described, Nick. And I would say these days, the way that shows up is in increased time with my wife and my 4-year-old. So I'm no longer having to sit in the car because we're all working virtually, which has been very helpful. I've taken advantage of that time. And so I'm my little guy, my wife, that's where I spend a lot of that time. The second thing I would say, I make sure I carve out time to do every day is related to my physical health. And while I'm doing this, I'll go for a run or whatever, but I'm also doing a lot of thinking and relaxing during that time. But it is so critical that especially these days, that you are deliberate about making sure you carve, that is you time. And you've got to be deliberate about owning that time for yourself.
Thank you all for sharing so much wisdom, so much knowledge for our students and others. Like I said earlier, I'm inspired to do more than I've already have done. Thank you all for being here. And just thank you again for sharing this wisdom with our students. We're going to transition folks to a new video. So wave goodbye to Michelle and Edward and thank them again. Next, we have a video coming up from Blue Cross Blue Shield. This year has been a telling one. So with COVID-19 and the racial unrest, everyone has felt the impact. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts has played a defining role both internally with their associates and externally in the community. We're now going to play a video of the last year and Blue Cross Blue Shield's position on last year as well. Feel free to drop your thoughts and your comments in the chat function.
Today, I'm declaring a state of emergency in Massachusetts. This declaration will give our administration more flexibility to respond to this evolving outbreak.
Thank you for calling Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts.
More than 90% of our company is working remotely now. We've really been focusing on our members, making sure they can get the care they need when they need it.
mental health is a wave of this pandemic.
It's our responsibility to make sure that everybody has opportunity.
I can definitely help you with that.
Racism is a public health issue, a public health emergency. I think we'll look back at this moment as a time when those values really became so visible to the community and to our customers and members.
All right, thank you for that beautiful video. I have the honor of, well, first let me address some comments in the chat. Yes, there are internships available at the end of the event. Blue Cross Blue Shield Massachusetts will talk about internship opportunities available at the company, as well as full-time positions available for those. And so shout out to the folks saying they want to work at Blue Cross. I'm happy you're inspired by this event. Next up, I have the pleasure of introducing two other folks who work at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they are what I'm told is on the junior level. So first I will introduce Marissa. Marissa Carrasquillo is a medical product specialist and vice president emeritus of the Latino Employee Resource Group at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. In her role, she is a contributor to the management and maintenance of the company's medical and dental products. She also serves on advisory committees for Playworks New England, the Greater Lawrence Family Health Center, and Amplify Latinx, and volunteers with kids in need of defense and Ozzy's Kids. We also have Yvonne Howard. She's a senior manager in the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts Audit and Risk Department. As a risk consultant, her role is to provide an objective assessment of large-scale projects, initiatives, and processes by identifying any risk or issues that could impede project success. Currently, she sits on the board of directors for the South Shore STARS program. She is also an advisor for the Black Student Union at Weymouth High School, a member of the Cultural Proficiency Committee for the town, and is the proud mom of two talented teenagers. So welcome to both of you all.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna start with the same question that I asked the first two. Can you all tell us a little bit about your journey within the company or in the professional field in general?
Sure. Marissa, do you want to go? You want me to go?
You can go and then I'll go after you.
Sure. So my professional journey is a little bit different than what folks think or is textbook. I went to Salem State University initially, and as I worked there in my junior year, I got a fabulous internship working as a public relations assistant for a company for the Big Dig. I, of course, thought, oh, I'm set for life, I'm ready to go. I actually stopped going to school and focused on my career. I said I'd go back when I needed to, but I have my job set, and then I was laid off from the company. So I had to figure out what was next, then enter my two beautiful children, who I'm so proud of, but that also deferred some of my journey. I didn't have a degree, but that didn't stop me through my career. I worked for Guarantor American Student Assistance for student loans. I then needed a job, a company that would allow me to develop professionally and personally and could manage my personal life with my children. And that's when I found Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so I came in actually as a temp on the phones with the goal of becoming a vice president one day. So I walked in and I knew that, and I said that, and I've worked very hard. I've had about 7 promotions, I will tell you, some lateral, some the same throughout Blue Cross Blue Shield. If you want to grow and change, the opportunity is here. I'm now a senior risk consultant throughout my journey, because as you'll learn as I talk about myself, I set goals, and I always have something that I need to achieve, and Blue Cross has allowed that. And I set small goals. So it started with receiving one of those really neat glass awards for doing something special in the community. And Blue Cross gave me that opportunity, and I now have 5. I had the opportunity to think about joining a board, and I knew that I wanted to. Blue Cross allowed to share, they provided information on it, and now I'm a board member. Career-wise, my goal is to continue to grow, and I know I can do it at this company. So without my degree, as you kind of heard from the last group, it's something that I, for myself, realized to get to my next level that I want to get to, I need to do that. And so I've been going to school, and I'm currently in school right now to finish that up this December. Cannot wait to pass in that last paper. But I'm doing it. And then I'll have that degree, not to mention 20 years of corporate experience that I'll share and use.
So I've known Yvonne, I think probably the whole entire time. So we're actually friends also. So I've seen her kind of go through her promotions. So very proud of her. So my professional and educational journey has pretty much coexisted. So I have always worked full-time, gone to school part-time. Prior to coming to Blue Cross, I worked at Children's Hospital. But I actually have worked at Blue Cross soon to be 21 years. And I started just like Yvonne on the phones, worked my way up to my current role. I'm fortunate that Blue Cross offers a tuition reimbursement. They also offer student loan repayments, so that when I done with school, I'll be able to, get a little bit of assistance with paying back my loans. This all allowed me to obtain my undergrad in business management. And then 3 years ago, Hurricane Maria hit. And I'm gonna try to say this without getting emotional, but I'm from Puerto Rico. So my family was, significantly impacted. And for a long time, I didn't even know if my family was alive. So I did a lot of soul searching. I knew that I had a desire to shift gears. And just like Michelle had said, I do a lot of volunteer work. So that component was missing in the work that I do. And I made a decision to go back to school. And I'm currently working towards my master's degree at Regis College in public health, which is more aligned to who I am. And it's helped me really, really understand who I am and marry it with what I do. So that pretty much is my journey. As you'll hear later on, some of the experiences that I've had at the college has led me to, once I'm done, I made the decision to continue and get my PhD in education.
Okay, I'm gonna jump the gun, but okay, doctor, we ready for you to be a doctor? Okay. You all both mentioned that you all are current students as well as full-time professionals. And can you talk to us a little bit about that experience? What motivates you, one, to do both? And Yvonne, you mentioned that you have children as well. So what motivates you all to do both? And what doors do you see your degrees opening for you?
So motivation is something for me. I always have a goal. So I always have a short-term goal. What am I doing in 6 months? What am I doing in a year? What am I doing in 5 years? And where am I going to be in 10 years? And that goal doesn't necessarily come in the steps that I need it to come, but What motivates me is my family. My parents have always told me I'm capable of anything. They've always pushed me to get to where I need to. You bring in kids to the situation and I can't fail in front of them. So I have no choice but to succeed. The other piece is me just personally. I love a challenge. I used to be afraid of failure. I used to avoid situations because I was worried someone's going to say something's wrong or it's not right. And one thing I've learned is you actually learn more when you fail. You actually learn more by sticking your neck out there and trying. And I'm not saying you just take a risk and go for it. It's a calculated risk. So going back to school was just that. I had to think about, all right, I'm gonna have to do papers and I'm gonna have to drop kids. So to share, my kids each play on 2 sports teams. They are straight A students. I am just today, I dropped one off at volleyball. I have basketball with one later. I'm here with you guys and I did a full day's work and I have 2 presentations for school that I have to have done and in tonight. And so what keeps me going through all this is the end goal. I know at the end of this, I'm gonna have my bachelor's of science in business administration with a concentration in organizational leadership. I know that I'm on top of that. I've already studied and I'm putting into practice a lot of what I've learned in school. I've got the background from my prior experience on PR. And so with all of that, it's the confidence. It's knowing I have a goal and I'm gonna get there.
So for me, it's a combination. I think I have professional and personal kind of motivations. So on the personal side, I think of all things that inspire me because I'm very fortunate to have a lot of folks in my life that are my cheerleaders. But I think my husband is probably my #1 inspiration. You know, there have been times that I've been like struggling because I'm overwhelmed and he balances me. He's the most level set, kindest person I know that will kind of just like bring me back in. And I think that it's important to understand, you know, don't sweat the small stuff, keep your focus on the big picture. It's important that you have people in your life that give you that kind of balance. And I think on the professional side, I think it's the fact that I had so many people that actually, you know, when I came to Blue Cross, I knew no one. So I really got the job on my own. And then as I've worked here, I've developed relationships. And there is a lot of diversity from the top down. You know, you heard Michelle, you heard Edward. There are a lot of other folks at this company that are just like that. And it always comes from the top down. We have a CEO that's amazing, that he himself could spend an hour telling his story. But I think the fact that, you know, I want to be that person that opens a door for others. And I think I know there is a Michelle Obama quote that always resonates with me. And it's like when you walk, and there's many of them out there, but my favorite is like when you walk through that open door of opportunity, don't slam it shut. You know, hold it open for the next person. So other people have done that for me and I want to be that for someone else.
Thank you for sharing, both of you all, and thank you all for both highlighting the importance of family motivators. One of the things that my mother always said to me as I was going through college is that, you know, I have a degree, so it's time for you to see, you know, what you can do. Can you get a degree? Can you maybe get 2? And so I went and got 2 for her. So hopefully if I ever have children, I'm gonna say, maybe you gotta get 3. No, I won't do that to them. But I wanna ask you also, what, if you all are both students currently, what advice would you have for students of any type, whether it be current students who are undergraduate, current graduate students, or current students who are doing a little bit of what you all are doing, which is working and doing some classes as well?
I would say you gotta have a plan and you gotta have purpose. Just like Marissa said, there are days when things are tough, where you're overloaded and you got a lot you've got to get done. And if you know why you're doing it, you will get it done, so that at the end of the night, you can sit back, smile, and check the day off your list, wake up and start anew. You also have to have a plan. You know, as much as we all know, and hopefully you guys understand, you can have a plan. It doesn't work out that way often. I'll tell you, I never thought I'd be here, but I knew I'd be here. I knew I was getting to this salary. I knew I was getting to this location. It was just how might have gone a bit like this. But I knew where I wanted to go to. I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to be in a company where I could be myself and continue to learn. And that was part of my plan. So be willing to write it down and shoot for it.
I would say dream big. Nothing is impossible. And if whatever you're working towards seems impossible because of life, then break it up. Break up your journey and do your dream just in steps. It's really hard when you have a plan, like Yvonne said, and something goes left. I'm a true believer that life leads you in directions that you need to be on. You learn from each experience. So just really, keep your eye on the big picture. The other thing I would say is also be authentic. Be comfortable in your skin. There's beauty in who you are. Don't let anyone ever make you feel less than what you are, because in reality, we all look like the world. And the reality is that for every single company, if you look in the mirror, you look like a customer. Much, much value in who you are, and just believe in yourself. Don't let anyone, you have to be your biggest cheerleader.
Thank you all for sharing that, right? Make sure you have a plan and be your authentic self and be your biggest cheerleader. And I actually want to continue that theme of authenticity. For you all at the company or in your journey in general, are there any key moments or stories that you would like to share about a time when you feel like you weren't able to be authentic, or you felt like your authentic identity would not be validated?
I think a couple of things. So as you're moving up in a company, you have a bit of a different journey, and your ability to stand out is different than on that executive level. When you're there, you have more power to do what you want and be and drive a division or a position. When you're working your way up in a company, it's your first day on the job, you're new, you're building your network. I liken it to social media. So you think of it like your Instagram. No one wakes up in the morning and takes the ugliest picture and puts that on their Insta. You have an Instagram life, and then you have the real you. Your career is your Insta life. You want people to see the best of you. You want to put out and control your message. So as you're thinking about your career, and as I have to be my authentic self, I've had to step back sometimes. I know, like I said, going into a workplace without a degree, you think I can't do anything, I can't get promoted, I can't go anywhere. Let me read the description. Let me read what I need to do. Let me find out who I need to meet, and I need to do the extra work on the other side. So again, for me, it goes back to what's my plan, what's my purpose. And then, like Marissa said, you have to know yourself. You have to find something that feeds you. So Marissa and I actually met as multicultural ambassadors at Blue Cross Blue Shield, where we go out to different events and we meet folks and tell them about Blue Cross and their products. And that fed my soul, because I'm meeting people, I'm getting to use my skill of talking. I wasn't where I wanted to be yet, but now I'm also building things on my resume. So again, always having a purpose, a plan, and making sure you're being you in any activity you take.
And I think I'm going to share an actual experience, because I think this may be an experience that students may come across as they enter the workforce. I actually worked for a leader where I was the top performer, and I worked hard. However, I was rewarded with more work, and you'll come across that. You're going to work really hard And the reality is, you know, Black and brown folks, we're going to work probably double as hard as others and not get the recognition. I accepted the opportunity and I was like, okay, I'm going to prove myself. Not realizing that I didn't need to prove myself. Deserved the opportunity. It belonged to me. A few years passed. I was promised promotion. I was promised opportunity for development. It didn't occur. That aha moment where I was like, you know what? No, I simply deserve this. I don't need to do all this work. I've already proven who I am and what I can do. Took a leap of faith, applied for another position, ended up aligned with a position that was perfect for me. It aligned with what I went to school for, my path. And, you know, somehow through this experience, I learned that only I can validate myself. I should not rely on somebody else to validate my work. I have to do that myself. So I promised myself that I would never allow another individual to drive my narrative. You know, never apologize for who you are, celebrate your diversity. You know, it makes you marketable because, you know, no one else can deliver what you can.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that advice. And it's so true. Sometimes we feel compelled to prove ourselves even after we've done those parts, right? We've already written the cover letter. We've already submitted the resume. We've already done the interview, and still we feel this burning desire to prove ourselves in these situations. I want to ask you all this question. Along with this idea, you both have mentioned ways that you've let your life speak to the work that you do. But you've also both spoken about ways where the company has resources for Black and brown people and in other identity groups or other often minoritized identities. For you all, how do you separate this idea of vocation? So this idea of what your calling is personally, and also vocation as a trade or an industry. How do you separate and or navigate those things in and out of the workplace?
So when you say trade or industry, you mean in the healthcare industry?
As your profession, so to speak.
So I'd say for me, it comes down to being comfortable in myself. I think as you're on your career journey, and Michelle and Eddie started to talk about this as well, you have to be open to feedback. You have to be willing to hear. You know, if someone is saying something multiple times and you've heard it from other folks, maybe you need to step back and say, I can approach this a different way. With Blue Cross and the healthcare industry, I've fallen in love with healthcare. I think I will end my life in the healthcare industry just because of what Blue Cross has shown me. Again, there's always a challenge. It's constantly changing. There's constantly something to do. It's not just about doctors and pharmacies. It's about marketing. It's about finance. It's about digital design, IT. There's just so much in there. So I know that I'll always have something to figure out. For me personally, they give me the space to also separate. So let's see, in April, I'm going to Vegas because I need to breathe and I need to be myself. But I'm able to do that because Blue Cross supports us. We get the time. As long as you're doing your job and you're doing it well, you can be yourself. And I need a company that can do that. And Blue Cross has allowed me to. The last piece I'll add to that is I'm so proud to be a Black woman. I'm so proud to be a single mom as a Black woman. And that comes from generations of strong Black women in my family. My mother is someone who, I'll tell you, just like you've mentioned, Nick, you know, she says something, the world listens. So it's the same for my sister. And I aspire to do that both professionally and personally. And I'm able to continue to grow that with this company.
I think for me, it's a work-life balance. And I think as students enter the workforce, you may find yourself in a situation where your work isn't fulfilling. So you may have to look outside to find something to fulfill you. Throughout my career at Blue Cross, there were instances where that happened. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a position right now where I'm in the health engagement area, where they kind of intertwine one another. And I have to say a lot of the advisory boards I'm on have been because of either a corporate initiative that the company has given. And the relationship, the connection was made. Similar to what Yvonne had said, there's a non-for-profit training that they offer, that you can go through this whole process and then get matched up with an organization to be on their board. I went through that. The company celebrates working in the community, giving back to the community. Yvonne had gotten a few years ago, we have an Excellence in Service Award. A few years ago, Yvonne got one. I actually was awarded this year's award for Health Advocate of the Year. So the company really does celebrate engaging with the community and giving back to the community. And I think that probably is one of the main reasons I've stayed with Blue Cross. It's that spirit of engaging with the community and giving back.
Thank you all for both sharing that. And that actually brings me to my next question. There's this belief that you should, you all mentioned that you all have different roles, or there are different opportunities that may interest you in pursuing in the company. As students, when we are undergraduate students, at least, we get this impression that this is what our specialization is in. This is our major. We must work within our major, right? And we also think that we must also just be fulfilled within that major and within that role. And so can you all talk about the importance of finding fulfillment in a variety of different places as you navigate your careers?
Mm-hmm. So I would say you have to pay attention to your inner self. You are going to be given tasks throughout your career. You're going to take on a job. As you start to do the tasks, pay attention to when you're like dying to get into it and get the work done, and when you're dragging your feet and you're procrastinating. Because what you start to build is what's called your wheelhouse of, I love to do this and I don't like to do that. In my career journey, when I started at Blue Cross, so I started on the phones. I love people. I'm great with people. I'm managing folks, getting folks to understand a situation, but I did not have the analytical side of things. Frankly, I tested out of it in college so that I'd never have to look at math again or an Excel spreadsheet, until I realized at Blue Cross, that's a big component of leadership. So remember I said I want to get to that VP level. So I needed to be able to tell a whole story and lead with all the pieces. So I then took on a role, the opportunity came up through networking, through the work I had already done, to work as a business analyst. So I was in a lot of technical systems, doing a lot of data. What I found is I loved the ability to pull it together and put a story together, but I could not sit every day and just do Excel spreadsheets. And so again, at this company, there was a finance development program. It's this leadership program. You don't have to be in finance, but what you get to do is basically take on a new role within the company. You do 4 rotations and you see what you like and what you want to do. And as I went through the program, I realized I like to be busy, so I don't like downtime. I realized that I like problems. I want to see when there's something new we have to figure out. And also it's important to me to learn. I have to do a job where I'm gaining something in it. There's got to be a with them in there for me. What's in it for me? So as you think about your career and you start that first day, pay attention to what you like and what you don't like. And then that will help to shift you to where you want to go.
Yeah, and I think also, like, as you're looking at places to work, you want to really take a look at the big picture and what they have to offer. Because you can definitely be in an organization like Blue Cross where you have multiple places to go, but you also can be, opportunities sometimes fall in your lap. And if you're passionate about something that's been presented to you, go ahead and, take a chance. You never know. I did that about 4 years ago. And we were presented I was the vice president of the Latino group here at Blue Cross. And the opportunity presented itself to do a partnership where we were able to grab associates that spoke Spanish. They would be translator. We would match them up against a lawyer, and we would start working with an organization called KIND, which is Kids in Need of Defense. And their sole purpose is to help unaccompanied minors that are immigrants that have crossed the border by themselves and help them obtain legal status. Now, it's the first time that I would ever have to bring something really high up to get an approval, because it's a little bit of a controversial, subject. Took a deep breath, went right up, asked to see if we could do it. And we are now, full blown into the program. And every single one of the lawyers at here at Blue Cross, the pro bono work for these children. And we're matched up with Spanish speaking associates that are able to translate. And we're all able to kind of help a child obtain legal status here in the United States, which is very important in the last administration, how we just got out of it. We're in a better place now, but that work for us was controversial. It was hard. There were times that, in order to meet with a child, if there was someone involved that wasn't of legal status, we'd have to do MacGyver moves to go here, go there, meet there, just so that we knew that ICE wasn't watching. So it's work that was important to me. I took a risk because I knew that it was a project that had meaning, and I thought that the company it would be important to the company. And I'm very thankful that they went ahead and took a chance and went ahead with it. And, it fit the values of who we are as an organization.
Wow. I can't wait till we get to talk about internships and careers, because this place seems like they're doing everything they can to make sure you all stay and also thrive in your roles. So this will be my last question for you all. I'm going to go back to this theme that I went to earlier about Dr. Howard Thurman. Our center here at Boston University, the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground, is founded on his principle of common ground, which has sort of two components. The first is a journey inward. It's about self-exploration. So some of the things that you all mentioned: know who you are, get to know who you are, learn more about yourself, right? That's the first component. And then the second component is this idea that meaningful and creative shared experiences, that if they're sustained and multiplied throughout a lifetime, they can be more powerful than the things that separate us, such as race, creed, religion, sexual orientation, and things of that nature. So for you all, and you all mentioned that you're also friends outside of the companies, how have you found sort of accountability partners through those meaningful and creative shared experiences at Blue Cross Blue Shield?
For me, there's been a couple. So one is, even with Miss Erica Chavez here, I have found folks who will push me. So we meet inside and outside of work so that we can talk. Maybe it's in a social setting, maybe it's in the office during a meeting. I have a couple of folks, again, who I've developed some serious relationships with just through activities we've done, and they are my peer checks. I will text them, I will call them. We get together to say, I did this, does this make sense? Or just to cheer each other on. And then also within the company, I know Michelle and Eddie talked about it, but I have mentors and I have mentees that I mentor, and I have conversations with them. You have to be willing to open up and have a conversation about what you've done to get feedback. If you work in a bubble, or you just work with, I'm me, deal with it, you're not gonna get to where you want to, because if you think about a job, it's being part of a team. Even if you are an individual contributor, you've got to balance the rest of the group. So you need to have someone that you can bounce ideas off of, or just call when it's been a tough day, and for someone to say, you got this. So it's the relationships that I've made, both professionally and personally at Blue Cross, that have helped me.
I have a combination of both work and at school. So just like Yvonne had said, it's important, and I think Edward had also said it, is that, it's important to have mentors and also sponsors. You need to have that person that's there that's willing to talk for you when you're not in the room. Hard work will get you noticed. It's important to have those mentors and those sponsors that will step up and help you and navigate you. Now, keep in mind, there are going to be times that you're not going to want to hear what they have to tell you. And you have to kind of trust that they see something in you that you may not see in yourself. So, keep an open mind when you hear something that you don't necessarily like. That's important. I think from an educational standpoint, it's important to kind of listen to your advisors. They definitely see something. That's what they're trained to do. See something in you that you don't see in yourself. So if you have an advisor asking you pointed questions because maybe they see something in you that you don't see in yourself, it's worth listening to, and maybe doing a little bit self-reflection, because you may have a hidden talent that everybody else sees and you don't see yourself.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for sharing your wisdom. We don't want to hold you too long. We know you folks got to work, you got families, and you also got to study too, okay? So thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing the wisdom with our community.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So thank you to our audience, and thank you to our viewers for viewing our program. We have a little bit left. Do not leave us. Again, we have a little bit left. I want to thank you to Edward and Michelle and Marissa and Yvonne for sharing all of this wealth of wisdom. Next, I want to introduce and bring Monica and Joel Kirk, both for talent acquisition team members. They're going to tell you more about internships, roles, the talent community, and about the wonderful resources at Blue Cross Blue Shield Massachusetts, and the ways you can use your different degrees as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction, Nick. Yeah, we've got a lot of different internships and full-time roles available, and we wanted to kick off our quick little conversation around that with Monica, who started out as an intern with us. So Monica, take it away.
Thank you, Joel. So I actually started as an intern here in summer of 2018, so summer going into graduation for me. And there was an internship that had opened up and it utilized my core skills. It was outside of my discipline. I was hoping to get a career in marketing. But when I saw this opportunity open up in the talent acquisition space, it really would have allowed me to use my core skills, and, it was definitely outside of the discipline. But had I not taken that chance, I might not have landed this opportunity here at Blue Cross. So it was really, really a great way for me to just find that confidence in myself and be able to, go on a path that I might not have otherwise. And, as Michelle and Eddie mentioned earlier, take risks, work hard, and be nimble. And think of every opportunity as an opportunity to learn. Everybody's journey is your own. And at Blue Cross, you really can use your degrees and skills in a lot of different roles. And also remember that when you're interviewing companies as well. So make sure that you're, exploring potential places to start your career in somewhere that means somewhere to you.
Yeah, that's right, Monica. We definitely like to stress that to people, because you want to join a company that embraces the same values as yourself, right? And I think you've probably heard from a lot of different people today about some of those values that really make Blue Cross what they are, and it's something to really keep in mind. So as you see, we've got areas of opportunity right now open in digital analytics and technology, and sales and marketing. We have full-time opportunities in software engineering. You can use your business degree and different degrees in a lot of different areas out here. And Monica and I just want to be a good point of contact for students. If you want to get in touch with us, we've got a talent inbox. We'd love to set up some informational conversations with you and just give you a good point of contact out here at Blue Cross. Our email address, and I think it's on the next slide, it's going to be talent@bcross.org. bcbsma.com. I'd also like you to join our talent community. Go to our career site, sign up for our talent community. It's a great way for us to keep in touch as well. You can sign up for job alerts, get notified of different openings. We can keep you in the loop on different events that we're having. Speaking of which, I'm going to actually drop a link in the chat for an event that we're having next week, next Thursday night, so a week from today, for our marketing team. So if you're interested in some of the things that we're doing in the marketing space, I invite you to come out and register for that event. We still have some openings there. So just really wanted to take a minute and just let everyone know that we're here to be a point of contact. Please stay in touch with us, and really just thank Boston University. We want to thank you, Nick and Carly, and all of our incredible associates who shared their stories today and given some insights to the students. And before we go, we just wanted to share a little video about what we are here at Blue Cross, just show a little bit about what we're all about. So if you want to roll the next video, let's kick that off.
If today's healthcare system is broken,
B is for unbreaking it.
If the problem seems too big,
B is for beating it.
if there's a worry left unspoken,
B is for being heard.
Because B is for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, and for being the change we need to be.
That we need you to be.
B is for bold ideas and brave choices.
Brilliant.
Because B is for believing every question deserves clarity.
Thank you.
Every answer should come with action.
Wham!
And that every health plan should be a help plan.
Yes.
Because when you put humans at the center of healthcare,
We're faster.
We're bolder.
Ageless. Fearless. We're unstoppable.
we are Blue Cross Blue Shield. And together, we stand for everything healthcare needs to be.
Awesome. So once again, thank you all for attending today, and hopefully this is only the beginning of our relationship and getting to know you. Please consider bringing your true colors to Blue. Have a good night.